My daughter-in-law stood up, pointed at my wife, and said, "Get up and leave." I didn't argue. I simply took my wife's hand and walked away from the table. And in that moment, I saw her expression freeze as the most important guests quietly stood up and followed us. My wife had been using a cane for 6 months. Knee surgery. The recovery was slower than the doctors predicted, and she was still learning how to move through the world with it. Careful on stairs, slow on uneven pavement, always a little embarrassed about the pace she set. She never complained. That was the kind of woman she was. We were 5 minutes late to the birthday dinner. The restaurant was nice. White tablecloths, low lighting, the kind of place where conversations are supposed to feel important. I helped my wife out of the car, handed her the cane, and we walked in together. She apologized at the door, quietly, for the time. My daughter-in-law smiled and said it was fine. We sat down. My wife unfolded her napkin. She asked about the menu, said something warm to the woman across from her. She was trying. She always tried. That's when my daughter-in-law stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just pointed at my wife and said, "Get up and leave," like she was directing a member of the waitstaff. Like my wife was a problem that had been allowed to sit too long. I looked at my son. He looked at the table. I didn't argue. Some moments tell you everything you need to know about a person, and that was one of them. I stood up, walked around to my wife's chair, and helped her to her feet. I picked up her cane from where it was leaning against the wall. I put my hand on the small of her back, and we walked toward the door. I heard the first chair scrape before we reached it, then another. I turned around without thinking. My wife's closest friend from 30 years back was already on her feet, folding her napkin over her plate. My former business partner, a man I had worked beside for over 2 decades, the one who had introduced my son to his first serious investor, was buttoning his jacket. The couple at the far end of the table, the ones my son and his wife had been quietly impressing all evening, were gathering their things without a word. Nobody made a speech. Nobody called anyone out. They just stood up one by one and followed us out. We stopped on the sidewalk. The air was cool. My wife leaned into me slightly, not from weakness, just the way she does when she's trying not to let something show. The door opened behind us. My daughter-in-law stood in the frame and looked at the group on the pavement. Something moved across her face. Not embarrassment exactly. More like the moment a person realizes the room they thought they controlled had quietly emptied while they were still talking. She went back inside without a word. My wife's friend touched her arm and said, "There's a place 2 blocks over. Good pasta. Let's go." We did. The 6 of us. Small room, no reservations, checkered paper on the tables. We stayed 2 hours. My wife laughed more that night than she had in months. What happened at that table didn't come out of nowhere. My son had been with my daughter-in-law for 4 years. The first year was fine. My wife adored her, called her on weekdays, sent things in the mail, recipes, little notes, a scarf she knitted over one winter. My daughter-in-law accepted all of it and never once reciprocated. My wife didn't hold that against her. She just kept going. The shift happened slowly. A tone here, a canceled plan there. My son started calling less. When we visited, there was always somewhere they needed to be within the hour. My wife never complained, but I noticed she stopped mentioning my daughter-in-law by name. That's how I always knew something was wrong. Not by what she said, but by what she quietly stopped saying. When my wife had her surgery, my son visited once at the hospital. My daughter-in-law sent a text. "Thinking of you. Hope it goes smoothly." My wife read it twice and put her phone face down on the blanket. The morning after the dinner, my son called. His voice was quieter than I'd heard it in years, slower, like he'd been up most of the night with something he couldn't put down. He started to apologize and stopped, like he recognized that an explanation wasn't what was needed. I let him finish. Then I told him one thing, that his mother had knitted that woman a scarf. He didn't say anything for a long time. 3 days later, he showed up at our door alone. No call ahead. He had flowers, the kind you grab in a hurry because you need to do something and don't know what else to do. My wife opened the door. She let him in. She put the flowers in water. They sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. I stayed out of it. When he left, my wife came and found me in the other room. She looked lighter than she had in months. She didn't explain. She just sat down next to me and picked up her book. That was enough.